And now I'm going to pass over control, and you should have it.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. Okay, so let me show my slides. Yeah, so hi everyone. Today I'm gonna talk about how you can use API to connect your Juji Chatbot to a third-party system. So why do you want to use APIs in your Juji Chatbot? This feature turns out to be very important because a lot of our clients already have some data in their systems. For example, if you are a restaurant, you might have menus, information in your website. And if you are a, say, university, you have student database, you have course catalog. Also, a lot of companies have, say, CRMs and lead generation databases. So with all this kind of data, we want to have an easy way to access and retrieve, update this information without you actually copy all your data into Juji Chatbot. And API is one of the most effective way to do that. API allows you to continue own your data without copying into us the entire data, and also you can still have your data security and privacy. Also, you can update your data using APIs. So as we just mentioned, the two most common use cases for API is to retrieve information and store or update information. Retrieve information can be simple ones like, I want to get the menu for my restaurant website. Or it can be more complicated as the user have a lot of information in the chatbot, and I want to send this information to my system and do some processing and give a recommendation based on all this information collected. Similarly, to store or update information can be simple API calls, such as I just want to store the user's email address and the names in my database, or it can be something more complicated. You do a lot of processing on your system. So basically, API calls allows you to leverage what you already have in your system. That's why we want to make it very easy for our user to make API calls. So there's only 2 steps to make API calls. And the first step is to find the API call button. The button can be found in text boxes in any of the topics, as is shown in the slide. And another place to find the API call button is inside the pre-action, post-action. So you can expand these customized chatbot actions, and you will see pre-action, post-action where you can add API calls. Once you have clicked on the button, you will see a window pop up where you can fill in the information for your API call. And we support 2 most common type of requests. So post request and get request, that covers the majority of the use case for API calls. And you can fill in headers, body. The headers is useful for say authentication. So some of your systems might have authentication, and you can put in your tokens, your password in the headers. And the body for get request typical means the parameters, and the post request body is usually a JSON for the body data. And response mapping is useful if you want to store some response information into your attribute. The attribute is in the chatbot, and you can use this information later on. And I will show you in examples. And the test response is also useful, especially for the get request, because it will actually make GET request and then show you what the response looks like. So let's see. Yeah, so once you add the API call, here this is what it looks like in your message. So if you have seen one of our previous webinar, you will see this display is similar to the function, but in the real chatbot, it will be a display as a card-like object where you will see the response of the API call. So here are some examples. This is a very simple GET request API, and it only has URL and doesn't have any parameter. So you see, I customize the name of the API call to cat fact, so I can easily recognize what the API is about. And the API is fetching random cat facts. And then I'm looking at this test response here because I want to see what the response looks like. One thing to be careful is the test response tab will actually make a request. So if you are, say, if you are making a post request, you might want to be careful because the post request might change your database. So in that case, you want to test differently, not using this test response. Here's another example of GET request, but with parameters. This API call is trying to guess the age of the user by giving their name. One thing I want to point out is that the parameter name has a value collected from the chatbot as attribute. This is very useful because this is where the context kicks in. You can bring in the username by the attribute, so different user will have different name, and then they will create different API calls in the real chats. This is another example, but of the same API call. Here, what I want to do is to store the age information in the attribute in the chatbot so I can use later. And you see in the path, under the path field, I put in this path information. This is a JSON, standard JSON path definition. Because the response in the first level, there's an age field, and the age field have the value of numbers, so I still store that in the attribute. In this last example, it's a post request. This post request is trying to add student information to the system. This one here, I am trying to add in email and names. So again, you see the values are actually attribute from the chat. So different user will create different record. Okay, so that's pretty much all the information for the API call. So I'm now going to show you some examples in action. So let's see. Slides. Okay. So I'm gonna create a chatbot from scratch. Okay, so let's put in some topics first. Let's say this is a chatbot that will live on your website. So usually we will put something like, first, do you have any questions?
No, we're good. So you can go ahead and continue on.
Yeah, okay. So I'm putting some topics. Then I try to collect some more information from the user, say the name. And you see the building dialogue is matching the right dialogue with the topic, the question. So you can double check that. Let's say I'm gonna collect email. Okay, looks like everything's right. And I'm gonna make one simple attribute first. So let's see what we can do. So one of the things we can do is to predict the gender based on the username. So let's say my gender is, this is the API call button. I'm gonna add the API call. You can customize the name here. Just gonna put gender. I'm gonna copy in the link, the URL for the API. So the API is actually, I found it online, so it's free to use. It's good for testing. So this API call typically needs the name, so I'm gonna put in the name. And here you can put in the attributes, this button here. So I'm gonna username and double check attributes correct. Okay, looks good. So I'm gonna add. So let's see what happens. Oh, okay, I have no question now. What's my name? It does have some name here. Let's make something different. So my name is actually John. Now let's see. Okay. See, so this is what it looks like, the response for the API call. The response is usually JSON. So it predicts I'm a male, and with probably 99%, which is very high. So looks good to me. Let's make some more complicated API calls. So let's say this chatbot on your website, and you want to collect some information from the user and save in your database, in your system. So we want to make a post request. So here's a so I can create post request to create a record. So now I'm going to change it to post. I'm going to copy in the link. This is another link I found online, but it's good for testing. So what do I put in? I put in the name of the user. Also, I want to put in the email. Cool. And we want to double check this is correct. User email. And let's use response mapping to remember the ID of the record. And we can use this to notify users, especially if the record is gonna be used later. For example, if the record is for the student might have their score information, GPA information get updated in the system, and later on they can come back to retrieve the information using the ID. Or this could be a product product report, and the user might want later on check the response for their reports. So here I know this response has this ID in the first level, so I'm gonna save this ID somewhere. I'm gonna put this as lead ID. And this toggle over here is also useful for post requests, because sometimes you just want to make the update on your database and you don't want to see the response in the chatbot. So so you can turn off the response display. Even if it is turned off, you can still pass in your response information and store it in the attribute and use later. Here, we want to turn this on because we want to see if the API is working. Okay, it looks good to me. So let's add this. Since we have the ID, so we might want to let the user know what ID is. So I'm gonna say your record. So then this is attribute because we saved them as attribute. ID. Okay, looks good to me. So let's try. Have no questions?
Still good on questions, so you're still good to continue.
Okay. So yeah, so this time I'm gonna use NC, the name here. Okay, still male, but only with 53%. But I'm satisfied with that. So email, okay, I'm just gonna use my real email. Okay, see here. So you create a record and there's a response. The response includes the information I posted, also the ID. And you see here, I'm getting this ID from the attribute. So it looks, everything is working. So one last thing you can do is to allow the user to check using the ID. So to do that, we simply add a get request API in the Q&A. So we can add a Q&A. Let's say, what's the status of my record? And so here, because we want to, first we want to create an API call. Also, we want to get the user's ID first. Both need to be done in the multi-turn. So I'm adding a request for your ID. And this doesn't look like the right dialog, so I want to use another one. Okay, student number. This one is typically very good for ID because it supports alphanumeric. Also with support different lengths. So I'm just gonna pin this. Okay, now assume I'm getting the ID right, then I want to fetch the information from the API. So I'm gonna create an API call. Now it's a GET request. Okay, record. Okay. I'm gonna copy the link. Again, this is a link from the same website. So I'm passing in the ID to fetch information here. So I have to look for oh no, it doesn't look like for this one. Yeah, I didn't name it, so this is auto-generated name. That's a code, and just make sure we are using the right attribute. Okay, this looks right to me, and add it. Okay, so let's add this Q&A and preview. Wait, yes, I have a question. So what is your status? Okay, so it's asking me my ID. Let me put some random ID, 2. Okay. Okay, see, it's getting this fetching this ID record. Obviously, the content is nonsense because this is a testing API on the website. But you see, you get the idea how you can connect your post requests, and then so you have a user in your chatbot, they can come say something. You collect some information and send to your system to get recorded, and then the user might come back, or different user come back to check their reports, the status. So this is how this works. So I think, let me see. Yeah, that's pretty much the webinar, and I just want to conclude that API call is very useful to fetch information and update information from your system. So basically, it helps you leverage what you already have in your system. And here are some resources you can find answers or reach us. And I do see there's some chats going on. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, Wenchi, there's a couple of questions. Ahmed had a question.
Yeah.
The request URL, is it the API for the website? Like in case I am using my SQL database, can I connect it through this URL too?
Yes, so
and he has one other thing just while we're at it. And can I update the information, for example, updating the ID?
Yes, so let me answer the first one first. The URL is typically the API URL. So if you are using a database, the database interface, you have to check your database interface, what's the API call to access the database. If you're using MySQL, so I would say it's different from the connection URL, because connection URL typically used to, so you can log in into your database, but the API call usually just do one thing. So you have to check your database. And can I update the information, for example, updating ID? Yes, so depends on your database. This way depends on the database. If the ID is generated and unique, depends on the constraint, you might able to update it, but usually you don't want to do that. You can use a different information, depends on what kind of thing you want to do. You can have another column for store information, but basically, once you figure out the API call to update your database, you can update normally, like when you are logging into your database. Any other questions?
Yes, there's one that says, can I use WebSocket?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think it might not work using current ones because we only making this one time. I'm not sure the connection will be hold. And asynchronous calls. Can you expand more? What exactly?
Henry, if you'd like, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and ask the questions verbally. That way it can be a bit easier to.
So let's say my bot is answering a question of which the server basically takes time to answer. So let's say it's good. I want to create, let's say, some ID, and the server basically takes some time. So I have to be able to say, well, can you wait 2 seconds? And then I have to hang around until the other guy sends me the results so that I can report my answer. And
yes, so right now, I think right now it is synchronous. However, in some case, you might want to do asynchronous, as it takes like 5 minutes. You want to want the chat to continue for 5 minutes until it retrieves something and
I'm sorry. Yeah, I got it backward. You're correct. Yeah, for asynchronous. So I want the chat to move on until I said, okay, now the server tells me that it's done. Let me inform you and let me pick that back up on that thread.
Yeah, so that's not supported in the UI, but it can be done on the script level, I believe. I have to double check with that actually. We do have that request somewhere back last year, but I have to double check with that.
Thanks.
Yeah, but right now I can say that on the design page, you can only do the synchronous call.
Right.
So I see another question.
We have another question. What about generating a random number in order to make reference number? Can we make through Juji Chatbot? So he's asking whether or not can the Juji Chatbot generate a random number as a reference number, I think. Ahmed, if that's incorrect, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask directly if you'd like.
Yes, actually we are doing a transaction chatbot, and each transaction we are creating we want to do a unique reference number for this transaction. So in the Juji, I will ask what is my reference number, or the Juji will ask the user or the customer what is the reference number, and the customer, he will answer the reference number, and then he will catch, and then Juji, it will catch from the database the status of the transaction.
Yeah, so yeah, I think Michelle also helped answer that we can generate a random number for you to do as the reference. However, I believe the database should be able to generate this ID number for you automatically to ensure the database will ensure the unique constraint. And so what you can do is like what I showed in the example. You can, after the database generate this record, you can return the ID to the user, and user can use this ID to later on fetch the information later from your database.
So Ahmed, this is Michelle. You can do both ways, like when she said it, right? So you can use the insert a Juji function, and when you can show the insert, because we do this actually all the time for other clients. You just insert the function, and you select it. Maybe when you can do a screen sharing. You can actually select the random function, and then doing and the random function, you can even dictate how long the number it is. will be 6 digits or 8 digits. You can even give a parameter to do that. And then you give this number to user. Then you call your database API call to store this number as a part of the record. And you give it to user too, right? So the user comes back, can use the same random number to access his or her record. So for example, if the user said, I want to deposit $5, said, oh, deposit is done. Here's your transaction number. Then the user comes back second day, maybe you store it in the database. The user might say this, could you show me the transaction I made yesterday? And you ask them, what's your transaction number? So user give your transaction number, you go to your database, find the transaction through the API call and return that.
Exactly, that's what I.
Yeah, basically very easy. When you can show them, sorry.
Yeah,
you can show them a number generator.
Take a look at this. Am I still doing a screen sharing? I think you can still see my screen, right?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah, so for example, in the previous example, I'm doing this career record. So let's say you want to add another one. So what you can do here is to say in the pre-action, so you call add a function. I think we have this random generation, random code. So let's say you a random number string. That both works. So generate random number string of a given length. So you say 5. That's the length of the number. And I'm gonna save it as attribute because you want to show the user. So you can say my number. Okay, so once you've done this is in pre-action, right? And so what you can do is to add another field. Or you can name it ID, depends on the API. And then, I think this guy here. So I'm gonna put this random number in. Make sure you are using the right attribute. And yeah, add that, so update. Okay, and here I want to say, so this is my ID. So, and your number is okay, so then you can see in your API call. Any questions now? Okay, so listen. Oh, it's not generating a number. So, but the number is generated, but I guess the type is wrong. So you might want to use a different type. So basically, this is how you can pass in the number from the function. Or it might be, you might want to generate number before at this level, before the topic. Does that answer your question?
Yes, perfectly and answered. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Perfect. Do we have any other questions? Okay. So I am sending over chat the link to the collection so you can see what future webinars we are having. Next week, we're going to be going over generating, automated question creation. Actually a great tool to use to help you really streamline your building of your chatbot. And so that's going to be a really great webinar. And also there's a link to the Juji webinar channel that has all of our recordings of all of our webinars that you can view at any time. And so feel free to see that as you like. And let me go ahead and take back control here from you. Okay. And so I have control back. Thanks. Anyway, so if you have any questions, you can also just feel free to send an email over to the events at Juji, and we can help with that as well. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week if you'd like to attend that next webinar. And again, I really appreciate the time that you devoted to this session. Thank you, Wenxi, as well, for preparing the webinar, and really great questions. So thanks. Ahmed, when can you upload the webinar through the email? And can I have Mr. Steven Pfeiffer's email? Yes, I will send you my email, Ahmed, okay? I'll just send it to you after the webinar is done, okay?
Thank you very much. And I have a question. Actually, you have your YouTube channel. It's very useful for us as a students too. So when this webinar will be available in the YouTube?
It will be there by end of business today.
Oh, okay. And there is a question. Can I ask it before you close the thing?
Yeah, give me one sec here. Let me capture back the hosting duties. For some reason, it's not letting me.
Do I need to somehow pass you?
Yeah, you need it.
How do I? Let me try. Make host, right? Can I make you the host?
Yes.
Okay, I just did.
There, perfect. Just wanted to stop the recording. So